I'm not anti-Semitic. I have to make that claim because I know everyone will take it there right away. But in doing thorough research, what it appears actually started World War II was not a crazed man's thirst for world domination. It appears that he did the same thing that Napoleon did. Because Max Warburg, who was the financial advisor to the Kaiser, who was the ruler of Germany before the Nazis took control, and director of the Reichsbank in Germany, which was their central bank, he's a Rothschild as well. He was responsible for the hyperinflation in Germany that crippled their whole economy. So when our Great Depression happened, theirs was way worse because they had just fought a war. No war was fought there. There was no war here. Like, at least we still had buildings and shit. They were rebuilding. And then Warburg causes all this inflation and cripples the economy. The economy, wipes out the middle class and toppled just the entire German economy, bro. So Hitler is hip to the game. Like, oh, they're at it again, right? And he knows the game with these Rothschild fools because they're all Jews. The name Rothschild, like you pointed out, they got that name from a red shield. Their real last name is Bauer.
The red shield?
Yeah. And Rothschild in German means red shield.
What else comes up when you put in red shield? I think it's what's that non-profit agency that goes around the world trying to act like they're helping people? They had a scandal in Haiti too.
The Red Cross?
The Red Cross.
Yeah, the Red Cross. Well, I got an interesting story about them in a second. But so anyways, he finds out and he fucking that's why the war started. Because I always wondered, I was like, well, wait a minute. If we know that Stalin was worse than Hitler, right? Stalin killed like 20 million people, bro. But he's on the same side as Churchill, which we know Britain is imperialistic and they're assholes. They're pieces of shit. They've done all kinds of horrible atrocities in the U.S. I mean, I live here, so don't get me started on the atrocities they've committed. So they're painted to be these heroes, but they're really not. Let's be honest. So why did he go against them? Why were they against him if he's such a monster too? I'm not saying he's a hero, but why were they against this particular monster?
You're just asking the question.
And I think this particular monster, I know, wasn't going for their shit. That's what it was, right? And that takes me to 1871 with Albert Pike's letter. Because Albert Pike was a Freemason, guys. His statue recently got torn down during the whole whatever was going on over the summer, these protests. And he wrote a letter in 1871 planning out this next century. And what he said was going to happen was there's going to be 3 world wars, and then they're going to make they'd make their move. And so high-ranking Freemason, this is what he writes. The First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the czars in Russia and of making that country a fortress of atheistic communism. The divergences caused by the agents of the Illuminati between the British and Germanic empires will be used to foment this war. At the end of the war, communism will be built and used in order to destroy the other governments and in order to weaken the religions. And that happened just like that, bro. Exactly what he laid out happened to the T. There was a Bolshevik revolution in Russia. They overthrew the czars. Communism rose up. And all of a sudden, they were over trying to get Germany because Germany, that same year in 1871, it unified as a kingdom, as a country. Because remember, I told you prior to that, it was like 20 different countries. And Prussia was like I didn't mean to spit like that, but Prussia was the main, force behind that. So they united behind that. So then he goes on to say, the Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists, the people that go along with the Jews, right? For people out there listening that don't know what a political Zionist is, you don't have to be a Jew, but anyone that is favorable to a Jew, you'd be a political Zionist, to the movement of Israel. This war must be brought about so that Nazism, right, German nationalism, is destroyed and that political Zionism will be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel and Palestine. So they're already looking at Palestine. In 1871, 77 years before the creation of Israel, they already want it. Okay? And during the Second World War, international communism must become strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which would be then restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for the final social cataclysm. So all that happens. They get rid of the German fascism. The rise of communism's happened. Everything's going as planned. Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agents of the Illuminati between the political Zionists, right? Like America is definitely a political Zionist, and the leaders of the Islamic world, right? So that's basically what we've had with this terrorist shit. That's what we've had. But it wasn't called a world war. But
it was a war on terror.
Exactly, with all the world fighting it. So the war must be conducted in such a way that Islam and political Zionism mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilist and the atheist, which reminds me of everything I'm seeing right now. People running up and down the street, like that whole Antifa thing, and they're like, dude, it reminds me of that whole type of deal, as far as, I'm not saying that some of the people on the right are any better, but I'm saying the atheist and that whole movement it's pretty powerful on the left. We shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm. Coronavirus, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Social cataclysm.
Kush and Chemtrails is not responsible for the views of Albert Pike.
Right.
Buck Ballsy is not responsible for the views of Emmett Flores. But we are here to bring you the information.
We'll trip on this. Then everywhere, the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement, which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. At the same damn time.
At the same damn time. Why you 6 feet apart?
And all that fucking has played out to a T. So when I look at stories that I've been looking into where they discredit the Holocaust, I'm not going to call it a hoax, but I'm definitely going to say that I believe that the numbers have been grossly exaggerated. What had happened was a lot of those Jews didn't get gassed. They never found any gas chambers. It was Russians who reported this shit. So we believe the Soviets now? We didn't believe them for years. I was just told in 2016, actually the last 4 years, that they stole an election. But we trusted them to report this when they wanted half of what Germany had. Why would we trust them? Right? It doesn't make any sense. Like, no one saw it for themselves, right? And I'm not saying Jews didn't die. I'm not saying they weren't treated horribly, because he was definitely anti-Semitic. He was not fond of Jews because of what Max Warburg had done as the general leader, and he just didn't trust all of them. So him putting the Jews in the camps had nothing to do with him being I'm gonna gas them all. He did that the same way the Japanese were put into internment camps here when Pearl Harbor got attacked. They didn't know who to trust, so they locked up all the Japanese. He didn't know who to trust. I'm not saying it's right, but he locked up all the Jews, right? And that's how that whole thing went down. So when they restructure when they restructure Europe after World War II.
Because really his beef then isn't with the Jews. It's with the bankers.
It's with the bankers, but to him...
Because that's what we're pointing out.
Exactly. But the bankers are Jewish. That's the thing. They're German Jews.
The Rothschilds, right?
Exactly. And a lot of these different... I mean, the dude's name was Warburg. So, like, a lot of these guys are German Jews, and he realizes, like, dude, I don't know who to trust. He's obviously probably pretty paranoid. I think there's been proof. I don't know for sure that he was doing meth. I don't know if that's bullshit or not, but he was probably a little paranoid too. You know what
meth
I mean?
Back then?
Yeah, but it was called something else. It wasn't called, I don't think it was called meth. But JFK took it too. He had really bad back spasms.
Ludes.
They would inject it right into his back. If you can imagine what that was like. But anyways, yeah, so when they restructure Europe and they draw all the borders, let's say here's Poland and Russia. They border right here. So let's say you have 20,000 Jews right here in Poland. But then when they restructure the map, they draw a line around where those Jews were, and they just casually never report those Jews. Well, as they add all that up, what they start saying is, they must have gassed them. They must have killed him, right?
You gotta be careful.
Because where'd they go?
Paper genocide?
Where'd they go? Yeah, it's like a false paper trail, right? And why? Because they're trying to establish Israel. They've been trying to establish it since 77.
So sentiment
for 77 years. And then you go to the Balfour Declaration, which just tells you exactly what's going on.
Lord Balfour?
Balfour, yeah. So the Balfour Declaration was a public statement issued by the British government in 1917 during the First World War, announcing support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, then an Ottoman region with a small minority Jewish population. Okay? So this guy, this Lord Balfour, he wrote a letter to the Rothschilds, okay? And let's see. Basically, let me see something, because it says Walter Rothschild wrote it. But basically what it lays out is that they want to somehow get their hands on Palestine. So after World War I, the Ottoman Empire, the Turks, they had Palestine, I think, for like 400 years. Let me see, is it right here? Anyways, they had it for like 400 years. Yeah, exactly. Okay, the declaration in a letter dated November 2nd, 1917, from the UK's Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour to Lord Rothschild. So he was writing to Lord Rothschild, and he was telling, because the Rothschilds are Jews, that they support a Jewish community set up in Palestine. So conveniently, 1 year after that letter was written, the war ends, World War I, and the British occupy Palestine. They occupy Palestine now, and they start encouraging Jews to move there. And this is, 37 years, bro? Or excuse me, 31 years before the creation of Israel, right? And they keep getting them to move there, And then World War II breaks out, right? And then that causes, I'm sure, a lot of people from those different areas to kind of be like, okay, we got to be careful, move out, whatever. But after World War II, the stage is set. These guys gassed all these people. They're horrible people, which I'm not saying they weren't. I don't know what the fuck the Nazis believed, and I really don't give a fuck. But from what I've done, from my investigative research, and really going through tons of information, and not in the internet, I'm talking about books. You've seen the books that I've been looking at, dude, that it appears that they used that bullshit story in saying that they were gassing Jews, because the real figure looks like it's about 1 million. That several died in camps from the way they were treated, the overall Jewish policies, the way they were treated just in general at that time, and then from the bombings and shit, because Germany was getting fucking bombed all the time.
Kush and Kemtrails, the world's most dangerous podcast.